Good morning, boys and girls. Today's Thursday, and we're getting ready to start on Chapter 7. The title of this chapter is about Blinker. Blinker, the white mouse who was the object of Silverside's rage, had been bred for laboratory research. His fur was pure white, his tail naked, his toes and nose pink. The slightest noise made him jump. The merest hint of danger brought fits of trembling. His eyes, so pink they looked bloodshot, could not bear bright light, a fact that caused him to blink a great deal. Though he was a frail creature, life had treated Blinker relatively kindly. Instead of becoming part of an experiment, he had gone into a pet store. When still an infant, he had been purchased by the girl who lived in Silverside's house. It was she who gave him his name. The girl cared for Blinker a great deal. A cage complete with an exercise wheel was bought, along with a sack of the best mouse chow and a bottle of spring water. Sweet-smelling cedar chips lined his cage floor. The girl fed Blinker on schedule, never failing to provide fresh water or to change his cage chips regularly. When home from school, she lavished affection on him, kissing and talking to him, carrying him about in her hands, on her shoulder, even in her pocket. She often brought him table scraps, candy, carrot bits, and sugar cubes. Though Blinker was supposed to live in the cage, the girl kept its door open. The only thing that the mouse was not allowed to do was leave the room. "You are my blinky winky mousy wousy, and I don't want you gobbled up by that nasty wasty cat," the girl crooned to the mouse. "So you must stay in our own room." Blinker quickly learned the wisdom of this policy. Each encounter with Silversides proved dangerous. Not that Blinker ever learned why he was the object of so much hatred. It was simply a fact of life. Since the girl went to school and was active in sports, Blinker spent most of his time alone. With the door to the room closed, he spent hours sitting by the window, gazing at the world beyond. To the young mouse, who had no experience other than the girl's room and his brief sojourn in the pet shop, the outside world was mysterious and appealing. Yet all he saw was a street, a park, other houses, humans, and many cars. Not once did he see another mouse. Hardly a wonder, then, that Blinker came to believe that all mice, if there were any other mice, were like him. The same color, the same life, the same long, lonely hours staring out of windows from inside houses. As time went by, Blinker wished the girl would allow him a taste of this outside world. She never did, not once. There were moments Blinker felt a little peculiar about his desire to go beyond the room and the house. Perhaps, he told himself, this longing to explore was unnatural. Did he not have a life that included the freedom of the room and all the food he could eat, as well as a clean cage with an exercise wheel? After all, he never saw other mice. Why should he want to go out? Full of guilt, he made himself do extra laps on the cage wheel by way of punishment. Between his desire and his guilt, he kept slim, trim, and fit. Then one day the girl made an announcement. "Blinker, I have to write a report for school, and I've decided to write about you. I need to explain about mice and how you are the most special creature in the world." Shortly afterward, the girl brought home an armful of books. There was the Oxford Illustrated History of Mice, Martha Stewart's Your House and Your Mouse, and the Book of World Mice. There was fiction about mice too, such as the story of a bad mouse, Runaway Ralph, Stuart Little, Abel's Island, Redwall, and others. Blinker had never been much of a reader. The girl's books usually held little interest for him. He avoided them, except then he now and again would chew their bindings. In the current matter, he had little choice. The girl not only read to him out loud, but she insisted he read by her side. At first, a reluctant reader, Blinker quickly became deeply absorbed in the books about mice. Long after the girl went to sleep, he pored over them. When the girl was at school, he read even more. These books altered Blinker's view of the world forever. He discovered that there were many kinds of mice, that most mice lived not in rooms but out in the world, that mice had families, that most of them lived free and independent lives. In short, to Blinker's utter astonishment, he discovered that the way he lived was the exception. He went on to read everything in the girl's room he could get his paws on. In doing so, he became highly educated. This new knowledge made Blinker almost breathless with excitement. Now, when he looked out the window, he would see things differently than before. The world, he realized, was something in which he might take part. He began to think he had a right to explore it, to make his own decision as to where he lived. His freedom to go anywhere in the room was nothing more than the freedom to wander about a larger cage. Now he yearned to wander beyond the door, to be truly free. Blinker was perfectly aware that there were moments when the door was left open. It was only a matter of time when that would occur again. When it did, he kept asking himself, should he or should he not escape? After all, there was the problem of Silversides. What was the point of freedom if it only led to death? Everything changed for Blinker the night Silversides crept into the room, leaped onto the girl's bed, and almost caught him. When the girl chased Silversides from her room, she meant to slam the door shut. But half asleep, she did not check to see if the door was truly closed. After the attack, Blinker was too wide-eyed with fright to sleep. Instead, he prowled restlessly about the room. It took only a short time before he saw the door was open a crack. But anxious about Silverside's whereabout, the mouse crept to the window and stared out into the world. Moonlight illuminated the deserted street below. Trees appeared tall and majestic. The early spring flowers, daffodils and crocuses, seemed to glow. Suddenly, a white cat darted across the street. Blinker blinked. It was Silversides. As Blinker watched the cat streak off, he suddenly realized he was free to leave the room. Just the thought of freedom made the white mouse tremble. He glanced over his shoulder. The girl had gone back to sleep. Hardly think of what he was doing, Blinker leaped to the ground and scampered to the open door. In moments, he was over the threshold. Down the stairs he ran. At the bottom, he began an almost desperate search for a way to get outside. Unfortunately, every door was closed. So too were the windows. But what Blinker did find was the cat's entryway at the rear of the house. Blinker was neither strong enough nor big enough to push this door open, but he was smart. Once he figured out how the cat door worked, he pushed it as if it were a swing over and over again. Watching the door swing higher and higher, he set his movement for when the door was at its highest. Then he shot through, pulling his tail behind him with room to spare. Blinker was outside and free. Okay, boys and girls, we're going to continue reading today with Chapter 8, The Cheese Squeeze Club. An exhausted Ragweed slept all day. Once, twice he woke, found a few stale crumbs to nibble, then dropped back to sleep. He did not really open his eyes until Clutch woke him. "Hey, dude, don't you think you've shaked enough?" she demanded. "Is it morning?" Ragweed asked with a yawn. "Mouse, you country dudes get here, the first thing you do is sleep for a week." Ragweed sat up. "Did I sleep that much?" "Hey, how about like all day? It's night already. You have anything in gear?" "In gear," Ragweed said as he got up slowly and stretched. Like doing?" "I don't think so." "Why not come over to my club with me?" Clutch suggested. "Catch my band. Meet some cool mice." Ragweed sighed. "I'm afraid I don't know what a band or a club is," he admitted. Clutch laughed. "You know what I like about you, dude. No, most dudes, when they don't know something, they're too frail to ask questions. Not you. You're a diesel mouse. I mean, truly excellent. Okay, a band is a bunch of dudes playing music, and like a club is a place where friends meet, you know, some band music, and you can mac out on crumbs and cheese. There's dancing too. One sweet scene. We call it the Cheese Squeeze Club. And..." "Clutch," Ragweed interrupted. "What?" "I don't know what diesel, mac out, or cheese mean." Open-mouthed, Clutch stared at Ragweed for a long time. "You're tugging me, dude." "I'm telling the truth." "Awesome," the green-headed mouse murmured. "You are the whole thing plus chips. Okay, like a diesel, it is a motor. So, you know, powerful. Mac and cheese, or mac out, means to eat. And cheese is, well, killer food. Trust me, it's made from milk. The point is, you hot to trot, I guess. Only remember what I told you before. Keep your eyes peeled for Silversides. We don't want to mess with her or her pal Graybar. See, we keep the club like secret. Don't want to have the cats find it. Know what I'm saying?" "I think so." Clutch removed her guitar from its place on the wall, then picked up a wafer of pale wood to which tiny wheels were attached front and back. "What's that?" Ragweed asked. "Like, basically, Ragweed," Clutch replied with a grin. You are one played out nerd. Know what I'm saying? It's my skateboard, dude. My wheels. Where you been? In the country. Well, like welcome to Cementville. With care, Clutch pulled aside the wood block that covered the entry to her car and peered out the street. After carefully checking in all directions, she said, "Cool, no cats." As soon as the two mice stepped onto the sidewalk, Clutch did the wood piece over the hole behind her. "In case you need to get in on your own," she said, "like just give the wood a smack up here, dude." She banged along the top right corner. It popped open. "Otherwise, it gets stuck," she added, closing the hole again. Ragweed nodded. "Let's hit it," Clutch said, and dropped her skateboard to the ground. With one foot on the board and another on the ground, she was still holding her guitar. She pushed off. She had barely gone a few feet when she popped the board up, getting a lot of air, then coming down smoothly, if loudly, on the pavement, feet firmly planted on the deck. This was followed by a second jump, in which midair Clutch spun around so that when she landed, she was facing Ragweed. "Wow," he said, "that's nice." He wanted to say cool, but he did not get it out. "Called a 180, Clutch explained with a grin as she did another half turn and sped off, but not before grinding loudly along the edge of a curb. Next moment she dropped off, did a maneuver high in the air, an ollie, dude, then tore off again, using first one foot to ride, the other to shove, then reversing herself. Ragweed had to run to keep up. Any skateboarders out there? Can you guys do an ollie or an ollie, or a 180? It's time to make connections if we can ride a skateboard. I've only been on one skateboard a long time ago, and I fell very hard on my patootie and did not want to get back on a skateboard again. As they went along, Ragweed was able to gain a better sense of Amperville, or at least the section known as Mousetown. It was too dark to see much, he reminded himself, and the lights on long poles were not very effective, but most of what he saw appeared to be very run down. Human nests seemed abandoned. Windows were broken. Doors were shattered. The wide, dusty streets were littered with bits of paper, metal, wood. Abandoned cars were everywhere. The only thing living was straggly weeds growing through cracks in the pavement. Clearly, it had once been a busy place for humans, but no more. After 2 more blocks, Clutch announced, "Here we are." They had reached a small, broken-down building. A dilapidated sign reading, "Sam's Shoe Shine," hung over a door frame without a door. Clutch flipped her skateboard up and carried it over the threshold. Ragweed followed. Whatever structure there was on the outside of the building, inside had all collapsed. Broken beams and cracked wallboard created a ceiling barely 10 inches above the heads of the mice. Leading the way, Clutch moved right, then left, then right again. "We keep it tight," she explained, "like to keep the cats out if they ever find it," which I seriously doubt. At the end of the corridor, the 2 mice scrambled through a hole in the wall, entering an open area with a ceiling made of rusty screening. At the other side of the area was a counter. Behind it stood an enormously fat mouse with large ears, brown fur, and a scaly tail. He was offering up cracker crumbs and cheese to those who asked. Mayor of Mousetown, Clutch said, with a nod to the mouse, goes by the name of Radiator. The area was alive with mice of many colors, shapes, and sizes. Ragweed noticed a few golden mice, some deer mice, a few short-tailed grasshopper mice, lots of house mice, like Clutch, even an occasional meadow-jumping mouse. Ragweed had never seen so many different kinds of mice in one place. A few were alone. Most, however, were in groups, about small piles of crumbs and cheese. Talk loud, constant and squeaking, made it hard to hear. "Hey, mouse, over here," Clutch shouted over to the den to Ragweed. "Meet my band buds." Clutch threaded her way through the crowd. "Hey, dude," Mice called to her. "What's happening?" "What's up?" "Hey, sweetheart." In contrast, Ragweed bumped his way through the mice. "Excuse me, sorry, pardon. I do beg your pardon." "Thanks." Under the stares of the mice, he felt very much the outsider. "Hey, dude, what's up?" Clutch cried. She had reached the far corner of the room. Two very different mice were sitting about a small pile of crumbs. "This is my new bud, Ragweed," she announced. "Just trickled into town." The two mice looked up casually. Their faces showed no emotion. "This is Dipstick," Clutch went on. "One big bad drummer. He's a grasshopper mouse." "Whatever," Dipstick murmured with a nod of his head. He had cinnamon-colored fur on his back, a white belly, and a white-tipped tail. "And this dude is Lugnut," Clutch continued. "He's a pygmy mouse, gray mouse in color." Lugnut was half the size of Ragweed, with tiny, delicate paws. His lidded eyes made him appear very sleepy. "He's on the bass," Clutch explained. "Awesome noise." "What's up, dude?" Lugnut said to Ragweed in a soft drawl. "I'm very pleased to meet you both," Ragweed said. "Yo, mouse, whatever," Dipstick said. "Hunker down and toss a crumb." He gestured to the pile. "Thank you." Ragweed sat down and out of politeness took a bit. "When's our set?" Clutch asked. "Soon." After a moment, Ragweed said, "What's a set?" Dipstick rolled his eyes. Lugnut darted an unbelieving glance at Ragweed, then at Clutch. "Hey, like," she said, "he just blew into town." "Yeah, right," Lugnut murmured. "A set is our performance," he explained to Ragweed. 10, 12 tunes. We do 3 sets a night." Dipstick hopped up. "Anyone want something to drink?" Clutch looked at Ragweed. "What do they have?" Ragweed asked. "Nectar, honey, water." "Water, thank you." "Anyone else?" The other mice shook their heads. Dipstick went off. Ragweed watched the crowd. Most of the mice seemed to be arguing, yet without anger. He wondered what there was so much to talk about. Then it dawned on him. Those mice enjoyed squeaking at one another. He found it fascinating. Clutch leaned over to Lugnut. "This dude here," she indicated Ragweed, "gets off the train and who do you think is waiting to say hello?" Lugnut gazed at Ragweed. "Graybar? Silversides?" Clutch nodded. "Busted," Lugnut murmured. Dipstick came back with a bottle filled with water in one paw. He gave it to Ragweed. "Radiator says we're on," he announced. Clutch and Lugnut heaved themselves up. "Enjoy the sound," Clutch said. "Keep an eye on my deck, will you?" "Deck?" Ragweed asked. "Skateboard." "Oh, sure." Lugnut shook his head in disbelief as the trio eased their way through the crowd. Ragweed heard him say, Your dude's an airhead. Hey, like he's funky, Clutch returned. Yeah, right, Dipstick said. Ragweed sighed, drew in the skateboard, took a sip of water, then settled in to watch. For a moment he lost sight of his new friends, only to see them reappear on the far side of the room, on what looked like a small platform. Dipstick seated himself amid a number of small tuna fish cans. Lugnut carried a large guitar made from a red plastic spoon and string. His guitar was bigger than the one Clutch had made, and the tiny mouse seemed even smaller than he was. As for Clutch, she was in front of the other two, tuning her own guitar. Radiator, who had been behind the counter, waddled to the platform. "Okay, guys," he called out to the crowd. "Glad you can make it down here tonight to the Cheese Squeeze Club. Our house band, the B-Flat Tires, is going to do a set. How about giving these cool dudes some Cheese Squeeze Club paw?" Some ragged applause and a few squeals were heard. Clutch stepped forward. "How you dudes doing?" "Want some funk?" came a reply. "Okay," Clutch continued. "We're one short tonight. Sorry to tell you, but Silverside's." Gaffled muffler. Moans and groans rose through the crowd. Clutch continued. "Hey, no one's saying being a mouse is easy. Nothing we can do about it except keep on trucking. That's the way Muffler would have wanted it, right?" "Right. So, let's get into some sweet B-Flat Tire grooves. Anyway, we're dedicating tonight's show to Muffler, okay?" She turned to her band and nodded her green head. 1, 2, 3. The music began. Ragweed was astonished. He had never heard such sounds before. There was a heavy, repetitious beat from Dipstick, who was flailing away on the tin cans with some twigs, making an awful racket. Every now and again, on a particular strong beat, he leaped straight up in the air, high above his drums. Tiny Lugnut, all but hidden behind his red guitar, nodded to the beat, closed his eyes, and plucked the strings with great intensity as his tail lashed about wildly. As for Clutch, she bobbed her green-tinted head and bounced up and down as she played. Her earrings swung as her tail kept to the rhythm. Then, in a hoarse voice, she broke into song. "Mouse in a box thinks he's a fox, but he's full of rage, lifting on life's lousy wage. 'Cause the world ain't cheese and you can't say please. Hey, nothing is a snap. Look out, here comes the trap. 'Cause the world ain't cheese. Ain't nothing say please. 'Cause the world ain't cheese and can't say please. Look out, dudes, here comes the trap." The last line was repeated over and over again, with Dipstick and Lugnut joining in from time to time with their own close harmony. Meanwhile, out on the floor, a fair number of mice had gotten up and started to dance. They were gyrating, some holding their paws up, while they were turning, twisting, dipping, shaking, and hopping, with tails lashing about. Some mice even leaped straight up into the air above the crowd, squeaking and squealing as they came down. And yet, as Ragweed looked on, there was hardly a smile in the crowd. The dancers didn't look at one another, but appeared to be more deeply involved in the music than aware of their partners. Some had their eyes closed. Others stared fixed at the screen above their heads or at their feet. As Clutch sang on, Ragweed found himself timidly trapping out the beat with his toes. Suddenly there was an enormous crash. The startled musicians stopped playing. The dancing ceased. Every mouse in the club turned in the direction of the noise. For a moment, it was still. Then one of the club walls collapsed. Into the room burst Silverside's face. "Good evening, mice," she said, grinning so that all her teeth were visible. F-E-A-R is here. And there is Ragweed and Graybar crashing into the club. Oh my. This is what's called a cliffhanger, boys and girls. That means we've left you in the middle of something exciting, and we will find out what happens tomorrow.